Good morning and welcome to World News here on TVP World. I'm Diana Skaya. And we begin in Ukraine. U.S. President Donald Trump says Russia has agreed to halt attacks on Ukraine for a week. Kyiv welcomed the announcement as the country braces for extreme winter weather. Speaking during a cabinet meeting, President Trump said he personally asked President Putin to halt those strikes on Kyiv and other cities for a week, and that reportedly Putin agreed. No further details of the temporary ceasefire have been released, and Russia has yet to comment. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky welcomed the statement, saying that such de-escalation steps contribute to real progress towards ending the war. And after a series of Russian attacks on civilian infrastructure, hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians were left without electricity and heating. Our correspondent Oz Katerji from Kyiv reports.
Temperatures in Ukraine briefly rose to above freezing late this week, providing some small respite for Ukrainians who have been living through Ukraine's coldest winter in decades. But there is currently no end in sight for the state of emergency in Ukraine's energy sector, as Russia continues to target Ukrainian power plants, cutting off power and central heating for as much as 80% of the Ukrainian population. The winter cold, combined with a lack of power and heating, has already led to at least one fatality, with Novaya Gazeta reporting that elderly Kyiv resident and Holocaust survivor Yevhenia Besfarmini was found frozen to death in her apartment in mid-January, as the Ukrainian capital was experiencing minus 18 degrees Celsius weather. Ukrainian authorities working round the clock to restore the power grid have also suffered losses, as 4 energy repair workers have lost their lives in January while on call. Responding to the crisis, Ukraine's allies have stepped up support to Kyiv in recent weeks. A Polish government initiative to supply Ukraine with hundreds of power generators donated from Poland's strategic reserve has just completed another delivery to the Ukrainian capital, with the shipment being unveiled in Kyiv by Ukrainian Deputy Prime Minister Oleksiy Kuleba and the Polish ambassador to Ukraine, Piotr Łukasiewicz.
There is 90 generators being donated by the city of Warsaw to the city of Kyiv.
Support has also been pledged from other European Union countries, including France and Italy, to help Ukraine deal with the deteriorating humanitarian situation. Temperatures expected to stay well below freezing throughout February. These generators could not have come at a more critical time for Ukraine. I'm Oz Katerji, reporting from Kyiv for TVP World.
Estonia is concerned that Russian war veterans, many of them former convicts, could flood Europe once the war in Ukraine is over. Now, will the EU ban them from entering the BLOC? Our EU correspondent Alex Kadier reports from Brussels.
Well, it's a proposal driven by Estonia, the Estonian foreign minister warning that there could be a flood of ex-Russian servicemen coming to the European Union if a peace deal in Ukraine is reached. And that is very much why Estonia and other member states are now seeing the value, of course, in an EU-wide ban for ex-combatants. We heard Kaja Kallas, the EU's top diplomat, talking about Russian war crimes, talking about that proposed ban and saying this.
The proposal was made and many member states around the table supported this, because if you look how many ex-combatants are there compared to the war in Afghanistan, for example, so there are a lot of them, and it poses a clear security risk to Europe.
So, of course, now that there is political will and it is a decision that has to be made by majority and not unanimity, the question will be looking at exactly how this ban can be rolled out. They are looking at the moment, we understand from EU officials, at about 500,000 ex-Russian soldiers who would have to be put on a list for this ban, coordinating with the member states to make sure they do not get in to the European Union. Now, of course, there is support among the member states to roll this out. The how will need to be figured out, but it has to be said that a lot of people behind the scenes wondering why this hasn't been put in place already. In Brussels, I'm Alex Kadier for TVP World.
Staying on Estonia, the country is set to ban Russian and Belarusian citizens, along with companies acting on their behalf, from buying property in the country. Now, the restriction applies to those without permanent residency, which requires at least 5 years of residence and passing a B1 level language test.
Permanent residency in Estonia is granted only after non-citizens have lived there for at least 5 years and pass an intermediate level B1 language test. Interior Minister Igor Taro says allowing Russian and Belarusians with unknown backgrounds to buy real estate poses a security risk amid ongoing Kremlin aggression. The ban will also apply to dual citizens. Since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, Estonia has rarely issued visas to Russians and Belarusians, limiting their travels through the bloc. Additionally, Tallinn has started banning Russian veterans who fought in Ukraine from entering the country.
President Donald Trump received full military briefings on potential offensive options against Iran, the Wall Street Journal reported on Thursday, citing sources close to the matter. Now, Trump is reportedly weighing his options, including the possibility of a military strike against Iran this following weeks of escalating tensions. U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said on Thursday that the Pentagon is prepared to carry out whatever decision the president makes. The United States started diverting its air and Navy assets to the Middle East earlier this month, following Trump's threats to attack Iran should the regime continue its brutal crackdown on protests. Speaking to the press on Thursday, the president revealed he was planning to speak to Tehran, but stopped short of providing details regarding the timing and scope of the talks. An Iranian woman living in Poland has described to TVP World how large parts of Tehran were entirely shut down when she visited the city in early January. The witness, who we have called Ariana, told our reporter Kazimierz Wysiak that people stayed away from work and took to the streets instead.
I went there, I witnessed that the city is totally empty during the day. Like in Tehran, you always see during the day and working hours huge traffic, but government said that everywhere all the offices are closed and they made excuses because of the weather, it's just polluted and it's dangerous. But obviously it was for obvious reasons. And it was 7th and 8th of January that our Prince Reza Pahlavi asked people to go to the street and take over the main streets. And his post on Instagram requesting that got 90 million views, even though it was only in Persian language, which shows that 90 million Iranians watched his request. And shockingly, especially for governments and for those in power, they would never imagine such a thing. Millions of people came to the streets answering to his request, calling his name.
Now you can watch the full interview right after this news bulletin at 9:15 CET or visit TVP World's YouTube channel. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer hailed the progress made during his visit to China, stressing the importance of building mutual trust and respect. Starmer is the latest Western leader to visit Beijing, following Finnish Prime Minister Petteri Orpo, French President Emmanuel Macron, and Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, who all visited China in recent weeks in light of recent U.S. tensions.
Yesterday we warmly engaged and made some real progress, actually, because the UK has got a huge amount to offer, and I was able to set that out. And as a result of our engagement, we've halved the tariffs on whiskey and also got visa-free travel to China for Brits. So really important access, symbolic of what we're doing with the relationship. And I fundamentally believe that the more we engage, the more we exchange, the more we take advantage of the opening of access to opportunities, business, art and culture and so many others, then that is the way that we build the mutual trust and respect that is so important.
And on that matter, Donald Trump warned the UK and Canada against getting into business with China. Speaking to the press at the premiere of a documentary on First Lady Melania Trump, the U.S. president said that turning to China is not the answer, stressing that it's even more dangerous for Canada, which in his opinion is doing, quote, very poorly.
Well, it's very dangerous for them to do that, and it's even more dangerous, I think, for Canada to get into business with China. Canada is not doing well. They're doing very poorly And you can't look at China as the answer. I know China very well. I know President Xi's a friend of mine. I know him very well, but that's a big hurdle to go over when you get Canada. The first thing they're going to do is say you're not allowed to play ice hockey anymore. That's not good.
A fragment of the Chinese Zhuk 3 carrier rocket is deorbiting and entering Earth's atmosphere. Since its flight path passes over Europe, including Poland, there's a risk that debris from the rocket may fall on Polish soil. Now, the Polish Space Agency is closely monitoring the situation and posting updates about the deorbiting Chinese rocket. The latest one says that because its estimated mass of 11 tons and its unknown structure, the rocket debris may not completely burn up in Earth's atmosphere. The agency says the object may fly over Polish territory in 3 places: the Bieszczady Mountains, the Baltic Sea coastline, and the Suwałki region. The Polish Government Security Center issued a statement saying that there are no indications that citizens should take any action in connection with the deorbiting rocket. "37% of Poles are happy with the state of the country's economy," this a new survey has showed. With forecasts indicating a 4% growth in GDP this year, there is likely to be an increase in the number of those satisfied with Poland's economy. Maciej Białowski reports.
As economic growth accelerates and inflation subsides, consumer confidence in Poland is rising. That's the result of the latest survey published by the Public Opinion Research Center, or CEBOS, a research institute based here in Warsaw. According to the survey, the share of Poles rating the economy positively rose to 37%, 3 percentage points higher than December. At the same time, the share with a negative view fell 1 percentage point to 26%. But a sizable share of respondents, just over a third of the total, had a neutral opinion, saying the economy felt neither good nor bad. To get a sense of the mood in Warsaw, we asked people on the street how they felt about the economy.
Our situation, economic situation, is fantastic because we are the leading country now in Europe. We just became one of the 20th biggest economy in the world.
I don't know. I normally don't keep up with these things. People are not going hungry, they're dressed well, so it's probably not that bad.
Rising confidence is backed up by data showing the Polish economy outperforming. Real gross domestic product, a measure of the value of goods and services produced in the economy, rose 3.8% from a year earlier in the third quarter of 2025, the latest period for which data is available. PKO Bank, Poland's second biggest lender by assets, projects the Polish economy will grow 4% this year. That's above the central bank's projection for 3.7% growth. At the same time, the rate of inflation, typically one of consumers' biggest worries, halved over the course of 2025. And Poland's currency, the zloty, is strengthening, with consumers and wage earners poised to benefit.
What we are seeing here is a massive reflation in the value of Polish assets and in the value of Polish wages and incomes.
And if the Polish economy keeps up this momentum, consumer confidence could be headed for new multi-year highs. Reporting for TVP World, I'm Maciej Białowski.
The top tier of Polish football, the Ekstraklasa, resumes after its winter break this Friday. But winter is far from over, with temperatures in the east of the country potentially plunging to as low as minus 25 degrees Celsius over the weekend.
Fans and players will be braving the freeze, restarting a month earlier than usual this season to help accommodate the expanded Summer World Cup schedule. There are no strict official rules on low temperatures, but minus 15 degrees is widely used as a guideline threshold where postponement becomes a serious option. Lately, the Ekstraklasa has been generating a lot of buzz in football circles, earning a reputation as Europe's most unpredictable league. At the halfway mark, league leaders Wisła Płock and bottom place Termelika Nieczecha are separated by just 11 points. Meanwhile, the country's wealthiest and historically most successful club, Legia Warsaw, currently sits second from the bottom, while top place Wisła has the same number of wins as 13th place Lechia Gdańsk. Adding to the chaos, Widzew Łódź, sitting just one place outside the relegation zone, has spent more on January transfers than the entire Spanish La Liga combined. Action on the pitch kicks off again on Friday evening with Zagłębie Lubin hosting GKS Katowice.
And with that, we end this edition of World News here on TVP World. I'm Diana Skye. Thanks for watching and stay tuned for more news and analysis.